It's time to wake to sleep with Sleep Science Today, where we learn to sleep well with your host, Andrew Kolsky on UK Health Radio.
All right, welcome back to another episode of Sleep Science Today. I'm your host, Andrew Kolsky. Today we are going to be talking about sex and sleep. We have our guest, Nihit Verma, MSc. He's a psychologist and sexual wellness counselor. Nihit, welcome.
Hey, thank you, Andrew. It's lovely to be here.
Great. This is a topic that has a lot of different parts to it, and we have not had an opportunity to discuss this yet, so I'm really happy that you've been able to join us. I want to get into today's episode where we're going to be talking about just sort of sleep and the sexes, sleep and sex, sleeping apart, sleeping together, all these types of different things. So to get us started with this, why don't we start off with just some of the basics? Why is sleep so important for overall health?
So I think, Andrew, I think sleep is honestly the foundation of almost every other, for your overall health, basically, right? Sleep helps you maintain a better mental health. It helps you maintain a better physical health. It helps you, it's crucial for your overall sexual health as well. I mean, which is something, of course, we'll be discussing in depth today. It helps in better hormone regulation. It helps in, on days you sleep well, you're less irritated. You feel more fresh. You feel more energetic, right? It helps in regulating your hormones. It helps. It influences your libido as well in the longer run. So sleep somewhere influences most of your bodily functions, and hence it becomes extremely crucial to your overall health.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting because I've been doing a lot of research in the area. I like to read the studies and see what's new out there. And lately, for me, I've been doing a lot of research related to age and sex, meaning like women post-menopause have different sleep issues that come in. You've got different things between people, deciding whether it's right to sleep together or sleep apart, all these things. So I'm glad we're going to talk about that today. But let's start off with sort of the difference between men and women when it comes to sleep and actual sexual functioning. Tell us about that.
Sure. So I think, Andrew, like you said, I think this is one of the topics that is hardly discussed. I think when we talk about sleep, we hardly talk about how it can influence sexual health for men and women, and lack of sleep for that matter, can impact men and women separately, in different ways. And I think most of my insights, Andrew, in today's discussion are going to be based on my own, partly research based and partly based on my own experience as a sexual wellness counselor. And I've been working in this domain for the last 2 years, specifically in the area of sexual health and behavioral health. And so a lot of it is going to be founded on my own observations and my clinical observation, to be more specific. So what I see in men, it is usually a reduction in the testosterone level. So lack of sleep impacts the testosterone level, especially lack of REM sleep, specifically for men, right? Which ends up causing erectile dysfunction, which is largely, which means difficulty getting or sustaining an erection, and it often also reduces the libido, so your desire comes down a bit. For women, it would impact their estrogen levels, which causes a reduction in their sexual arousal. Lack of arousal causes issues with lubrication. So even if you give into sex, it'll create a lot of, there'll be a lot of irritation, maybe burning sensation, maybe difficulty having a very desirable or a very satisfactory penetrative intimacy. And like you said, I think you pointed out hormonal imbalance at different stages of life. So especially menopause, or post-menopause, or even during pregnancy can sort of negatively. So sleep disturbances during these specific periods of your life can have tremendous negative impact on your sexual health, Andrew.
Mm-hmm. So, as we compare sort of men and women here, so women we know as a part of nature, they go through menopause, and that's typically, 40, 50-year-old range, roughly, right? You were talking about men and lower testosterone. Is there an age range that tends to impact men?
Again, I think basis my observation, Andrew, so I think for men can have like a regular sexual functioning up till pretty late, in their adulthood. So even let's say they're 60, 70 years old, I think they can have a pretty well functioning, sexual systems and things in place, and they can have like a really good intimacy. And this can impact anybody, Andrew. I think irrespective of age, to be honest. Even if you're irrespective whether you're 20 years old or you're 60 years old, insomnia, a lack of sleep, non-diagnosed sleep conditions can wreak a havoc. So age might not be a deciding factor here in any way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm sure we've all heard of, for example, men who have low testosterone levels, not necessarily related to their age, but just their system has a low testosterone level.
Just because of lack of intimacy, physical activity, or lack of sleep for that matter, or other lifestyle conditions. And it doesn't necessarily have to be age specific.
Mm-hmm. So on this particular topic, we're talking about sort of hormones, we're talking about ages and phases of life. I wonder, in your own experience, just clinically in the clients that you work with, do you see any differences, or have you even paid attention to any differences between like people who are in better physical shape, who exercise more, people who have a better diet than other people? Do those things have any impact on what you see in your clinic?
Oh, absolutely, Andrew. I think people who are regular with exercise, people who are, and not just, it doesn't have to be like a specific rigid exercise regime, but people who are moving a bit more, people who get enough steps in during the day, people who walk a little throughout the day, end up having a better sexual health as compared to somebody who has a very sedentary life. And likewise, I think nutrition plays a major role. People who are eating more balanced foods, more organic, more less of junk food, less processed foods, end up having a better sexual health because of most of their nutritional requirements are being met through the food. But people who are heavily dependent on junk food or highly processed foods end up experiencing issues in the bedroom as well because of nutritional deficiencies, which can be very common as a result of eating food that isn't properly prepared or isn't balanced.
Yeah. No, it's like I said earlier that I've been doing a lot of research in this area, reading of research in this area. And, as I was looking into some of these issues, a lot of the research that I've been coming across, you read one study and it kind of leads you to the next and the next. Yeah. And there's so much information coming out now about not only proper sleep, but the nutrition and the exercise as it relates to sort of fending off dementia as we get older, and how important it is even in your 40s to be very aware of the foods that you're eating and exercising. And, obviously that's going to affect your sleep as well, because if you exercise regularly, you eat a good diet, you're going to have better sleep. But it's such a big area now, this sort of dementia, and there's this mind diet. I've been reading about that. It's really fascinating. I'm planning to have some shows coming up in the future talking about those things. So let me ask you this then. So if we are sleep deprived, man, woman, whatever, and what's going on there that makes us feel so irritable and off, and does that affect our relationship with our partner?
I think, Andrew, absolutely, because let's say, firstly, I think answering your first question, so one was what's basically going on. When we are sleep deprived, your brain basically struggles to regulate emotions. And it is partly because of reduced activity in your prefrontal cortex. So, prefrontal cortex is the front part of your brain, basically, so somewhere below the forehead. And it's responsible for your rational thinking. And it also sort of heightens the activity in the amygdala, which is another part of your brain somewhere which helps you in processing emotions, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there is a imbalance that's created because of lack of sleep, which makes you more irritable. It makes you more prone to mood swings, and we also end up making poor decisions. So I think, and all of this can translate into your relationship as well. So if a lack of if you're sleep deprived for a couple of days, or even for one day for that matter, or even if you're like, or in certain cases if you're chronically sleep deprived, it can lead to like a lot of irrelevant, unnecessary arguments, misunderstandings. You will, I think, your tolerance towards the other person comes down, so your patience levels are a bit low, which impacts your emotional connection, which impacts your communication. And it, in the long run, because the relationship is suffering, it also ends up impacting your sexual intimacy. So your sexual intimacy is being impacted because of lack of sleep, and it's also being impacted by the negativity that's being created in the relationship somewhere, Andrew. So yeah, I think there is high emotional disconnection and reduced physical intimacy as a result of sleep deprivation.
Yeah, yeah. It's as I work with clients of my own, one of the things that has become sort of a mantra, I guess, that I talk about with patients is, especially, going back to women and menopause, what happens is we all hear about hot flashes and all. And so you can have a woman who is sleeping, and in the middle of the night, she complains, I'm waking in the middle of the night and it's hard for me to get back to sleep. And many times the reason that she's waking is because of hot flashes, and so the temperature becomes different. Now she's uncomfortable. And so one of the things I talk about with those clients is have different layers of blankets and things so that you can change the temperature in the bed. But not just that, it's important to have those in terms of separate from your bed partner, because you think of two people in the same bed under the same covers, well, you can't regulate that very well. Yeah. But if you have your own set of covers, then you can regulate the temperature, and then that cuts down on the friction or arguments that could come up between bed partners, right?
Right.
Yeah. So there's tips and tricks that people can use to kind of regulate those things and make it less uncomfortable.
I think absolutely, Andrew. And I think that's why it's so important to reach out to the right experts, I think, whenever you need help. I think often people, and I think sex being such a taboo topic, we, especially in a lot of cultures, you don't talk about sex, and you're really hesitant to talk about sex and even sleep for that matter. Or it's often very misunderstood as well. So because of lack of understanding, misinformation, taboo, etc., we don't end up talking about such things, and it becomes really hard, and you end up suffering in silence. I think the best thing is to reach out to the right expert, be it a sleep doctor, or in cases of sexual issues, maybe to a sexologist or a sex therapist, and get things resolved.
Yeah. No, you're right. It's interesting. We don't talk about sex because of sort of the taboo, and we don't talk about sleep because oftentimes we don't think about sleep.
Yeah, we don't think of it to be very important. So
right.
We just end up suffering.
Well, let me take a quick break here because we've got to go to a commercial break. And when we come back, I want to talk about whether sleep can make someone more attractive. So we'll be back in just a minute.
Sure.
You're watching Sleep Science Today. If you enjoy our show, please help support us by pressing the like button, subscribe to our channel, and hit that notification bell. It'll really help us get seen, and it'll help you stay informed. Okay, Andrew Kolsky here with Sleep Science Today. We're back talking about sleep and sex. And just before the break, I said when we come back, we're going to talk about whether sleep can make someone more attractive. So, Nihit, tell us, what do you find?
I think that's a very interesting question, Andrew. It's definitely not a myth, I would say. It's somewhere true, and I think a lot of studies prove that when somebody is well rested, you perceive them to be more attractive and more healthier as well. So sleep ends up promoting better blood flow, so it gives you a healthy, shiny skin. It reduces dark circles, it reduces the puffiness around your eyes, and because apart from these, I think physical characteristics also, it boosts your mood, so you're feeling more energetic, you're feeling more confident, maybe you can engage in conversations, etc., which of course makes other people perceive you a little differently than somebody who's been chronically sleep deprived, Andrew. And also, it's not just about other people's perspective. I think it's not just about it's also about how you feel about yourself. You start feeling good about yourself on days you're well rested, and when you think yourself, like when you feel good about yourself, your partner also ends up feeling better about yourself, which of course can increase better communication, better more intimacy, basically, between emotional intimacy, physical intimacy between individuals. So there is definitely some truth to this statement.
Yeah. Well, I can imagine. I mean, you think about today and how we all live very busy lives, and think about a typical family with young kids, and mom and dad are running around getting the kids to school and to football practice and to all the different places they have to go. And by time, mom and dad are also typically working. And so by the time they get home at night after dinner, they're probably both exhausted.
Yeah.
And, the last thing, the only thing they can think of is just falling into bed and falling asleep, I'm guessing. So, those are just sort of the life things we deal with today. So I can certainly understand that being well rested could change that a lot.
True. And this is something I see so many times in my sessions as well. Couples have different sleep schedules. Couples have different work timings. People are so busy, and all of that does impact your. All you need, or like you said, all you want when you come back home is just like a good sleep, and all you want to do is rest. And I think if and sex often sort of takes a back seat, if you're not well rested, if the stress levels have been high. And I think since we were talking about hormones a while ago, we often forget to mention cortisol, which is the stress hormone. So I think high levels of cortisol obviously impacts your overall your testosterone again, your overall desire levels again for men and women does come down.
Yeah, well, and it just makes it difficult for you to be a happy, calm person in general. Not just sleep, not just your relationship with your partner, but friends, coworkers. The clerk at the store.
It's not just romantic, exactly. I think it's more than that. I think it impacts all your relationships with other family members, work colleagues, your friends.
Yeah. So then let me ask this. One of the things that, especially for people who listen to information about sleep, I'm sure they've heard many, many times how important it is to have a standardized sleep time and wake time. And that is one of the key elements of good sleep and restful sleep and so on and so forth. So my question to you is, when it comes to sexual health, would it be, what's worse? Is it pulling an all-nighter or having an inconsistent sleep schedule?
I think, Andrew, honestly, both aren't the best options here. An all-nighter will obviously make you a little more grumpy the next day, you might feel a little fatigued. And I think all of us notice this, even on days I haven't, I am working, or maybe I was out all night, or maybe I didn't sleep the next day. Of course, I am a bit grumpy and I am a bit fatigued. So an all-nighter usually has a short-term impact, but I think a inconsistent sleep cycle can do more damage, because it can disrupt your entire circadian rhythm, and leading to chronic sleep issues like insomnia and heightened stress levels, heightened cortisol, hormonal imbalances that we've been repeatedly talking about. So I think both aren't recommended. I think it's best, while I understand, I think time and again an all-nighter might happen at some stage or the other, but if possible, I think if you can minimize that, would be the best.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's as we're talking about this issue and the sleep schedule and all that, I figure I'll throw in a little tip here that I wish I had known when I was in law school. The way that they do law school, at least my law school, was you would study all semester. You had no tests, you had no quizzes, you had nothing to base a grade upon. And at the end of the semester, you would get one final exam, period. That's your grade, whatever that is. So, of course, you get to the end of the semester, and everybody's cramming to make sure that they know everything, because you have to know everything from the full semester, because you don't know what's going to come up on the test. And so, I was studying and trying to do my best, of course, and realized that, oh man, I don't know this part as well as I should, or I don't know that part as well as I should. So I'm studying and studying. And then comes the question, do I stay up all night and keep studying and trying to get more in, or do I go to bed? Now, at the time, I tried to stay up and keep doing more. What I've learned since I've gotten into sleep medicine is you need to sleep, because when you sleep, and especially when you get to that deep stage 3 sleep, that's when your brain is able to process all the information, form the memories, make things happen. And so you're actually going to do better on your test if you sleep than if you try and force yourself to stay awake and then go in all groggy and confused and whatever. So just a tip that I wish someone had told me at the time. I figured it was relevant at this time.
I think I had a bit of an experience myself, Andrew. I think very similar. And I think it was a learning experience for me as well. And this is back in school. I think as a 7th or 8th standard kid, and I think probably I was up all night studying, and I ended up performing badly as compared to, and I had prepared really, really well. I was very confident I'm going to score a really nice grade. However, it wasn't as great, probably because of the brain fog that I was experiencing the next day when I was sitting with the paper. Like you said, the information processing becomes very difficult as compared to on days, even if you're slightly less prepared, but you've slept well, and you're able to process the information, connect certain dots much better, make certain linkages much better, and the test outcomes are significantly better when you have had a good sleep before the exam.
Yeah, and I don't know about you, but when I went through school, nobody ever taught me anything about
nobody
sleep.
talks about it. Like you said, nobody talks about sleep at all. It's often, people boast of the fact that, we were up till a certain point in time studying or working, and in certain cultures, again, I think sleep, working late or not sleeping at all or pulling an all-nighter is often encouraged, for that matter. But yes, it has so many negative impacts than the positive ones.
Yeah, well, and the good news is that that all of this information about sleep is now becoming more mainstream, and people are becoming more aware of it, so they can integrate that into their schedules and their routines, and that's important. But the scary thing to me is you think back to those medical doctors in medical school, and when they're doing their residency, the requirement that they go in and they stay up all night in the hospital, and they have these ridiculously long schedules. I can only imagine the level of care that they're able to give, not because they're not good doctors, but because they're sleep deprived, they're exhausted. I don't know why we have that system, but that's what the system is for some unknown reason. Maybe I'll find a guest to explain it to me one day.
But it definitely needs to change, Andrew, for sure. Like, I have so many of my friends are doctors, and I know what they go through because of the system that they are in right now.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know how that started, but different topic for a different day. So, all right, let's talk a little bit more about intimacy now. Let's talk about cuddling or being intimate before bedtime, before you fall asleep. Is that something that actually makes people sleep better? Is it just wishful thinking? Tell us how that works.
Uh, I think it's definitely not wishful thinking. In fact, recently I've been getting a lot of these reels on Instagram, and I think there's this line that goes, "You sleep better when you're with somebody you love," or something like that. And it's actually science backed because physical intimacy, including cuddling, or just sometimes just being near somebody you really really love, and increases oxytocin, which is a love hormone, I think, more colloquially speaking. And the oxytocin increase in oxytocin basically reduces your cortisol levels, which is your stress hormone. And this hormonal fluctuation or change in hormones promotes better relaxation, it reduces anxiety, and it helps you sleep much better, much faster. Um, so definitely, I think it can be a natural way to sort of wind down and improve sleep. So cuddling uh, is like medicine, Andrew. I think I would say it's extremely necessary. And if you have somebody romantically, go for it. You can cuddle with your friends as well, if that's okay. With pets, with the family member. So it doesn't have to be again very sexual in nature. It doesn't have to be. It can be very platonic as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, you hit upon something there that I definitely wanted to ask about related to this, which is there's a lot of questions, and I see online different opinions about sleeping with your pets. And I know many people have dogs or cats or both or whatever it may be, and they have their pet sleep either on the bed or maybe even closer to them. I actually, had a cat previously that one night, he came up and he kind of curled up into where I was. He wanted to be next to me. And I was like, okay, that's fine with me. So tell us more about that. Pros, cons of pets in the bed.
Um, Pros would be definitely a better sleep, more oxytocin, like I just spoke about. So it does help. There's this feeling of warmth, and definitely reduce anxiety, more relaxation. Cons can be if you're somebody who doesn't. If I think hygiene can be an issue. So I think this is something that I came across recently in one of my couples therapy session, where if one partner does not like sleeping with pets and the other partner does like sleeping with pets, it can create some kind of friction between the two. So if it's something that is important to you, I think there has to be some kind of communication with your partner, whether or not we are okay with sleeping with pets, so that at least it doesn't cause any friction in the relationship for that matter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, that's definitely true. Communicating with your partner and making sure that you both agree on whatever, whether it relates to sleep or not,
Exactly.
is always important. Well, this is a spot for me to take our second commercial break. So let me go ahead and do that real quick. And when we come back, I want to keep our conversation going. I've got several more questions for you. So let's jump to commercial, and we'll be back in just a minute with Nihit Verma. You're watching Sleep Science Today. If you enjoy our show, please help support us by pressing the like button, subscribe to our channel, and hit that notification bell. It'll really help us get seen, and it'll help you stay informed. All right, Andrew Kolsky, Sleep Science Today. We're back. We're talking about sleep and sex. And I have another question for our guest. My question is, why do we sometimes feel more tired after sort of a lazy day with poor sleep than after a long active day with good sleep?
Uh, Again, I think, Andrew, this boils down to the fact that even though you had a lazy day, you were probably cuddled up in the bed, watching something all day. and for some reason you didn't sleep well, or maybe you were up all night watching something, scrolling through your phone, you're bound to feel very, very tired, because your body does not get that restorative process of sleep. So sleep helps in it helps reduce muscle fatigue. It helps reduce, your brain goes through its own cleaning process at night when you're sleeping. Your body gets enough rest, your muscles are relaxed, and you feel better and more well rested and more energetic when you wake up. So irrespective of, so let's say on days you might have, a very busy day, maybe you had you indulged in certain physical activities which were very strenuous, and you were able to, and you slept well, maybe you completed at least 6 to 8 hours of sleep, you will feel much more relaxed and much more rested, because your body could get that restoration. Your body could go through, you could restore, and sort of, your muscles were more relaxed, and hence you were feeling better the next day, as compared to on days when, even though you were in bed all day, but you could not sleep. And I think being more lazy, or just being, in bed, can also trigger, can make you leaving more fatigued, honestly. That's something that I feel for sure. If I'm just in the bed all day long, I just end up feeling a little more fatigued. Do you encounter something similar, Andrew?
Yeah. I've always heard it referred to as sort of oversleeping. And when you sleep too much, you just sort of lose your energy. You lose, your vitality. And for me, it's important to get up and actually go outside, because when I get outside and I get that natural sunlight in the morning, it completely changes the way that I feel in terms of my level of awakeness. If I just wake up and I'm staying at home and I haven't gone outside, even if I have my window shades open and everything, I still feel somewhat lethargic compared to the way I feel when I actually just step outside. And so, that natural sunlight and that circadian rhythm part of it plays in as well.
Yeah, and I think this also highlights the idea of rest, Andrew. I think for most of us, probably the idea of rest is a very passive thing. When you're resting, maybe you're just lying down on a couch or on your bed. But I think rest can also be a very active rest, where maybe you're going for a walk. Maybe you're doing something that you really like. Maybe you're indulging in a hobby that you really enjoy. So something that sort of breaks the monotony of the daily life. So rest doesn't necessarily have to be very passive or just lying down, but yeah, it can be a very active chore, like you said, where you're going out, getting some sunlight, going for a walk, and it does make you feel much more rested, much more energetic, well-regulated hormones, more rested, repaired muscles, better emotions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and as we're talking about it, it brings to mind the fact that a lot of sleep clients tend to be folks who are 60, 70, 80 and above, because of their stage of life. They have different, sleep is different depending on your age. And so as you get older, you tend to have more issues with waking in the middle of the night, waking earlier than you wanted to. And a lot of those clients that I'll talk to, they're retired, understandably. They hit a retirement age and they decided to take time to go do what they wanted to do, which is wonderful. But the thing that many of them tell me is that they're actually looking for things to do. So they spend time at home, sitting on the couch, watching TV, napping, and then they're having trouble sleeping at night. Well, during the day, they're not being active. They're napping, so they're kind of getting their sleep in a way, and then that impacts the nighttime sleep, which causes the insomnia, and then they get into this, cycle where everything is kind of thrown off. So, being active and not having that lazy day every day becomes an important thing to get good sleep and therefore have good relationships and everything else, just like we talked about before.
True, absolutely, Andrew.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, another question I want to ask about, which is sort of a very standard battle of the sexes here, is oftentimes you'll hear about a wife complaining, my husband snores and he snores so loudly I can't sleep anymore. And I moved to a different room, or I kicked him into a different room. Tell us about how things like that, whether it's good or bad to sleep separately, try to sleep together. What should people do?
Andrew, I think this is such a classic question. I think snoring can obviously disrupt a lot of things in between couples, especially if one partner is non-snorer. So if they don't snore at all, this leads to a lot of the frustration basically that builds up between, a lot of tension that builds up between couples. Often the partner who's not snoring, if they're sleeping together, they experience again all the issues that we discussed before: fatigue, irritability, low mood, low libido, and this again impacts their emotional and physical intimacy in the long run, right? So the sexual satisfaction scores are really, really low in such couples. And again, a lot of these couples don't even reach out for help. So again, a lot of clashes that keep happening. I think since it's a largely a problem, I think that there's a solution which a lot of couples have been engaging in, which I think colloquially is called, again, sleep divorce, where you sleep separately. So you sleep in two separate bedrooms. But when we indulge in such an exercise, Andrew, I think what's very important to understand the purpose of this exercise. So I think that's one thing that we need to get really, really correct is, why am I doing this? Okay, and the only purpose of this exercise should only be getting your sleep better, and nothing else. No other hidden agendas when you're trying to sleep separately. And a disclaimer here, I think if you're trying to sleep separately, and if this is something that both you and your partner have agreed upon, and this is for the listeners, you need to make sure that there is enough intimacy, or you prioritize intimacy outside of the bedtime for sure. Okay, so you are prioritizing romantic interests of each other. You're going on dates. You are maybe making out time for sex and for cuddles outside of the bedtime. So that the quality of relationship does not suffer, because often in such situations there is always this risk of maybe deprioritizing certain aspects of intimacy, because like you were talking about, Andrew, so life can get very, very busy, and if we start sleeping separately and we're not prioritizing other things, then things do get really bad between couples. So if you're able to sort of find a balance, I think it's all about finding a balance. So as long as we're able to find a balance, I think it's a win-win situation.
Yeah. And it's, I love the concept that you're talking about of sleep divorce, where it's like, nighttime, I'm going to my place, you go to your place, we'll both be happy in the morning, we'll both get good sleep, which is fine, as long as there's no issues in the relationship like you were describing. But I also want to point out, for people who may not be thinking about it or have thought about it, if someone is snoring, a very loud snorer, a very heavy snorer, it is important also to kind of listen in and listen to see if they are also stopping breathing at times. And that would be something like, it sounds like the person just stops, and then a little while later you hear this, this quick wakening and gasping for air. Those are signs of sleep apnea, which is a lot more common than people may realize. And so in cases where the person is snoring because of sleep apnea, or they have sleep apnea, if they get the sleep apnea treated, then the snoring goes away if they're using a CPAP or a dental device or whatever is right for them. And then you can end up with the couples sleeping back together because the snoring is no longer an issue. So it is important that people evaluate that. Don't just snore, but if there's a problem, you really need to get it checked out.
Absolutely. I think that's really important. So if you're experiencing a lot of snoring, please do reach out for help. I think it can just save your relationship, improve your sex life. And I think another thing to keep in mind is, if either of the partners is not very okay with it, then it might not be a very good idea. So it's all about, I think, the communication. It's all about making sure that both of you are on the same page if you're trying to attempt something like this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, and that seems to be sort of the theme throughout everything we've talked about today is you got to have good communication between the partners so that the relationship itself is in a healthy state. And the things that you're doing related to sleep are because of sleep, not because there's a problem in the relationship or something. So that's an important part. I did want to throw in one other note here, and again, I think it's because I've been doing a lot of reading about menopause and issues later in life with people. You know, we tend to think, as we were talking about sleep apnea, we tend to think of a middle-aged to older, more overweight male when we talk about loud snoring and all. And one of the things that people probably don't know, I didn't know, is many women, when they reach the age of menopause, they don't need to be overweight, they don't need to be heavy snorers, whatever, but they do start to develop sleep apnea. And that's another reason that they wake in the middle of the night. And they don't have the typical warning signs, so they never even think to be checked for it. But it is something, if you fit that category and you find yourself waking in the middle of the night, you may have sleep apnea. It's something to think about. So, well, we are actually out of time. Time kind of flies when you're having fun here. So I want to take this opportunity to thank you for joining us and sharing all this information. I think it's important information for people to have. And any last words before we close out the show?
I think thank you so much, Andrew, for having me here. I think it was an absolute delight. I think we've pretty much covered a lot of things today. I think just to sort of wrap up, I think it's very important for us to understand that sleep issues is not just about feeling rested. It's also about building a good relationship, having a healthy life, healthy, fulfilling sex life as well. So please prioritize your sleep, and like Andrew said, if you are experiencing any issues, please reach out for help. The people who are willing to help you and can help you with the issue that you're experiencing. And yes, I think that's pretty much, Andrew, that I wanted to just cover up before I end the session.
All right, well, I appreciate that, and I want to remind our listeners to visit us at sleepsciencetoday.com. You can sign up to be on our mailing list and get notifications about all the things that we're doing here. You can find my new book there, Why Can't I Sleep Well? That's a new book I put out. It answers 150 of the most common sleep questions with the answers and all the science behind the answers. Not just my opinions, but I'm giving you the science. And join us each week for the next episode of Sleep Science Today. We look forward to seeing you next week.
Thank you for listening to Sleep Science Today and learning how to sleep better with your host, Andrew Kolsky, on UK Health Radio. For more information on how you can achieve better sleep, go to sleepsciencetoday.com. Remember, sleep science today and sleep better tonight.